familiar face. I met this gentleman at ASPRS briefly here a couple of months ago. But we didn't have a conversation then, but we're going to have one now. So if you would real quick, Robert, if you would just quick, give us your name, who you're with and what you do.
My name is Robert Young. I'm a land surveyor in Texas, and my company is Trans Texas Surveying and Mapping.
Okay.
Cleveland, Texas.
Okay. And what, like your survey company, do you guys specialize in any one thing or you just kind of do a little bit of everything?
We specialize in LiDAR,
Okay.
terrestrial and airborne. However, we do everything because we're a very small company.
Mm.
We have all the latest and greatest tools, but we don't compete with for the big government contracts
Okay.
because of the structure of the way it's all set up. But we provide these services, and that's the reason I'm out here at this conference, is because mapping is what my passion is. Mapping. Boundary surveying began in 1977. That's going to be my talk. It's my journey and international harvester that carried us around. But anyway, it's now everything's different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So what do you think about the modern day surveyor?
well, it's an interesting mix. If we were really good at not just doing the measuring and the analysis, but if we were good at being a magnet, we would probably not have so many problems finding new people to come in. But most people don't know a surveyor because most of us are introverted. I'm kind of not. I'm a statistical outlier in many senses, but because we don't tell people what we do, and because we go off in the woods and do it alone, there's many small survey companies, and I respect these guys. They're one-man companies. They can do everything themselves, QAQC. They don't have to deal with employees. They don't have to deal with anybody but themselves and the clients.
Yeah.
However, it's these things I think are impacting the professional surveyor. Then there's people that are embracing technology. I always have, and I always will, because I'm always looking for what's next.
Yep.
And back in the 80s, whenever I went to work for Wild Field, I had Texas and Oklahoma. My job was to sell and train surveyors and engineers on electronic data collection. So all of a sudden, the chain and transit, the stuff that I said, I don't want to be this. And I quit and went into corporate America for 8 years. When I came out, then I went right into selling for Wild, and I learned. I got to meet all these different companies all over Texas and Oklahoma. I was one factory rep. Now there's companies, and that's great. But technology's changed. But I learned not just about the technology, but about surveyors. And the thing about the current one that I'm getting to is the fact that the best surveyors we have, regardless of the technology, have fundamental basic procedures like redundancy. They don't just single shot. Because when radial size shots were invented or whatever with the
remember those
before the row body, all of a sudden we went from just a few points a day to a traverse and hundreds of data points on topos, and all of a sudden that revolutionized. And of course now with point clouds, it's millions and millions. So anyways, it's very, very intriguing to me. And I think that sticking with the things that got us here, the fact that we're experts at measuring, not just analyzing the boundary, but we must, if we don't check ourselves, I don't think there's enough publications. ASPRS does a great job of publishing the standards. That's why I went to the conference, because I'm realizing, hey, this is dangerous if we don't, a lot of people don't know the difference between a control point and a checkpoint. It's just, it's out there for us, but we have to, we can't just check off, hey, I got my license and I'm through learning. I think that continuing ed sometimes in many cases just addresses the same things, boundary analysis, which is great, but communication, self-education, leadership skills, those are things I think we need to do through our state societies and other professions. Because professionalism is what we have it in our name in Texas, Texas Registered Professional Land Surveyor, RPLS. Yet, just because we name something doesn't mean that, we just need to inspire people. That's what I'm going back to.
Yeah. Well, actually be a professional, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying
No, I get it.
if we were better at it,
Mhm.
there's success leaves clues, and so does short successes,
Yeah.
being short of. So if we're not in growing numbers and we don't have people wanting to get in,
Yeah.
I think that we need to look in the mirror at each of us individually and figure out what can we do to inspire people to come in.
Yeah.
Do you
Well
think
said.
do you think the numbers of people getting into this profession are lower now compared to 30 years ago? Or do you think it's just
No.
been a steady?
I think in our state, there's been a lot of metrics done by one of the professors who's a surveyor at Dallas College, Sam Shoemaker. A lot of metrology of, measuring all this stuff. And it appears, from what I recollect, I don't have the data in front of me,
Yeah.
but it's about the same.
Really?
So interesting, right?
Yeah. So anyway, and after the opening talk this morning about our big issue of having people,
Yeah.
I don't know if you were there, but golly, that was
Yeah.
very, very enlightening. Then we need to train the ones that we have, and the opportunities that we have, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's where, mentoring comes in.
Big
right?
time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's what it's all about, especially at
to
my
happen.
age, at 70 years old. And what I find is giving knowledge, time, energy.
Yeah.
Is the biblical saying, you reap what you sow, but in my life, I think you reap 1,000 times what you sow, be it good or be it bad.
True. Yeah.
But it's
That's
just so energetic to be around people where I can share my successes and my failures. Man, I've had many failures and I'm public about them.
Yeah.
But failures in the eyes of what? Failures are just stepping stones.
Yep.
Because
Learning opportunities.
the best thing I'm at is starting over. And I say that being resiliency. Look at what define resiliency.
Yeah.
Because being the first with technology isn't always fun or lucrative.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
I love that. Like you're the best at starting over. Like, not a lot of people see it
Well
that way.
said.
Hey, there's one sport that I'm pretty good at too.
Uh-oh.
And that's skating on thin ice.
I love it.
Little humor doesn't hurt.
That's awesome.
Look back. You said something earlier that you're a small firm,
Yeah.
but you have the latest and greatest. How do you work out having the fanciest tools when you're a small company like that?
Well, right now there's just 7 people and myself. However, I've owned companies where there was over 80 employees. The one I owned right before it imploded because I got embezzled, and it was I wasn't minding my own business. I was at FIG speaking about GIS. I was doing all these things that were not helping me focus on my mission.
Sure.
So all I'm telling you is, in the past, I've always, from the days of Wild with the TC 1000 and the TC 1600 and the onboard data collection and WildSoft and contour interpolation program, Tim Kerr, John Stenmark, Gary Affelter, Jim Reed, Chuck Lee, all these guys that were surveyors that worked for Wild, which became Leica, which is now Hexagon. Those guys taught me 3D mapping and computers.
Yeah.
Because if I was going to sell equipment to somebody, then I would sit with them until they were proficient, or I would be supporting them 24 hours a day. So you might as well just do there. And you learned about their business. You learned about the people.
Yep.
It was a great learning experience.
Yeah. Well, you were very fortunate to have had that experience.
I know.
Not everybody.
I know. That's why I'm
exposed
so
to that.
grateful to tell. That's why I wanted to go share this story. I don't need fame. I don't need glory. I don't need anything, but I have a unique position in actually pulling chains and doing 50-foot grids by double chaining and then shooting stadia or a level rod.
Mhm.
We didn't ever we didn't even radially tie the hubs because we had baseline. We knew where the hubs were, station and offset, 50, 50, 50.
Yeah.
It was simple other than rubber bands to draw contour lines.
Yeah.
It was like, but that was the best. That was the most efficient. And then the HP 65 came out in 1974, which was, I didn't start till 77, but my boss got one in like 76.
Sure.
And that revolutionized their
Oh my
company.
gosh.
Just having a handheld calculator. I'm just telling you that I'm lucky that I'm still alive and thriving because, I don't want to just survive. That's why
Yeah.
I get up every day and do my best to
Yeah.
be the best me I can be. Surveyor, person,
Human
human.
being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
do you
why-
feel like you have a responsibility then to mentor more and to carry something on to another?
Always. Like back when I had another big company. I've owned 6 survey companies since 1992 when I started. 4 of them I owned before I had a license.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just tell you, when you know what you want to do, when you're focused.
Yeah.
I'm 3D mapping, but I had to pay for it through doing a lot of oil and gas and boundary. But
Yep.
now, I saw the first LiDAR scan, I think it was 1999 or 2000 of the Corpus Christi Bay Bridge. Tim Kerr, I think, came down with a Leica big heavy scanner and scanned it. And it took like 3 days to get the answer, but it was mind blowing. But it was like the investment of about $1 million. I'm like, well, no,
Yeah.
and then now
Crazy.
we can get this. The reason I bought the equipment was because I always have. I was one of the first to own 4000s
Yeah.
RTK in the 90s, the Sunnyvale Trimble RTK clinic, 2
Yeah.
weeks. But all I'm telling is I'm a seeker, but I'm
Yeah.
also a finder.
Yeah.
There's a lot of seekers out there, and
Yeah.
a lot of people that just exist, but
Yeah.
I'm a very motivated, passionate individual, and I happen to be a land surveyor, and I love what I do.
Yeah, the passion's amazing. So is there anything that you can think of right now, technology driven, that could or is revolutionizing land surveying? Like you mentioned, the HP calculator was
well,
revolutionary.
Okay, in my life,
Yeah.
that, and then the showing stat,
Yep.
and then the HP 3800, the big orange one that where you dial in the distance when we got it.
That was like a EDM type thing,
Yeah,
right?
the first distance
yeah,
meter.
distance
That
meter, yeah.
the first one I saw.
Yeah.
And then the data collection with a total station, and the RTK, well, static GPS. Static GPS
Yep.
came out. Magnavox and Wild invented the WM101 for civilian access of the satellite signal, and it took hours to do it, but that was revolutionary. Now these days, improvements with oblique photogrammetry
Yeah.
or point clouds. LiDAR aerial is great for elevation, but picking up features isn't all that great. However, you can combine it with terrestrial scanning or SLAM scanner, handheld.
Yep.
And then photogrammetry. Photogrammetry has gotten it was such a big deal. I had customers that would buy the WildSoft contour interpolation program, Aerial Data Services, Cliff Medford in Oklahoma, bought that software to take their they had aeroplanes and, big
Yeah.
cameras, but they would take their photogrammetry in it and use it to interpolate contours as opposed to following the fiducial point on a stereo plotter.
Yeah.
So, I'm so blessed to have seen all these.
Oh,
things,
yeah, right.
And the people that I've met, it's
Yeah.
incredible. Not just the people at WOW, but all the surveyors that have mentored me because of working all over the state.
Yeah.
It's a very diverse, large geography with many different climates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all this new technology, do you think it's like making the surveyor dumber in some ways?
No,
Or do you
it's
think
just-
it's making more tech savvy? Like what?
Neither. I don't think it's dumber. I don't think you get dumber, but I think that people decide that they're going to buy some technology.
Yeah.
Because they need it. They want to get this contract or whatever. But the issue these days is it isn't just the technology, it's the human component to make the technology useful, efficient, and effective.
Yeah.
And that's where we miss out. The other thing is we become complacent.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
become complacent with pushing a button, and we just train people to push. It's like the
Yeah.
thing.
I think that's what I'm saying is like,
Yeah.
that's kind of dumbing it down a little bit.
Well, it's
But you
just,
also have to know the limitations of each of
Okay.
these pieces of
and
technology.
where do people get that knowledge? That's what I was back at earlier. ASTRS has these great standards. And then in our state society that I'm in, we can't really talk about brands, and we rely on people that sell the equipment, that's cool. But
Yes.
I test, I've got published a little article about comparing the DJI L2 with the Regal Mini 3 LiDAR system.
Yeah.
I don't tell people what to buy. Just here's the data.
Yeah.
Here's what we found. This looks like this. This looks like this. But we don't have enough of that. We
Yeah.
have people, competitors of equipment slamming each other, but we don't really have the shootouts like we used to have back in the 80s.
Yeah.
We had EDMs and there were other brands other
Yeah.
than Wild, at least one brand, and the yellow brand. And we set them up, and I'd take a gallon of water and I would pour it on top of my total station. I'd say, okay, here's you a gallon. They go, we can't do that. And people would say, well, I want that one because we work in the rain. I'm just,
Yeah.
the little things like that,
Yeah.
that was competition. But
Yeah.
now it's more like everything's proprietary. And that's the issue with personnel. A lot of the companies that have expertise in remote sensing and LiDAR, there's only a small group of people that really understand. You have to reach out. If you want to learn about this, that's the big issue is people want the quick fix. They want to spend the money and get the tough and get the map.
Yeah.
But if you don't, that's the whole purpose of the talk. The thing about redundancy and checks and QA, QC, and making sure that that you add value, that you're turning out a product that has, in the words of my late father, he'd say, he'd see something he didn't think too much of. He'd say, son,
Yeah.
that has no medicinal value. And I'm like, okay, cool. I remember that. I remember several things.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
it's just, I think that it's like everything else, guys. Leadership, whoever's in charge, whatever their focus on, whatever their purpose is, that's going to dictate what happens. And so whether it's a little company or a Sunday school class or a soccer team or whatever, or a survey company, I think that leadership is so important that we worry a lot about measuring and math, and that's all very important. But that's the difference between a surveyor and an engineer. There's many differences, but it's not just the math and the formulas. It's the analysis and the interpretation of law and so many things.
All the wisdom.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that comes from interacting with old surveyors. So to
Yep.
help back to the mentoring, it's all about interacting with other humans and doing our best to set high standards for ourselves. It's easy to judge other people, but the only person we have any control over is ourselves. So if we set standards and judge ourselves and not the other people, it's a lot better off. I don't know that.
So good.
Yeah.
It's
No, I'm
awesome.
just telling you
No,
that
it's good.
that's what I think is.
I agree with you completely.
I'm not.
completely.
Yeah.
Well, we just got a life lesson for the day, if nothing else.
I
right? That was
am-
awesome.
I consider me learned.
Consider you learned. Yes. Yeah, it's awesome. What's like, I mean, I think you've kind of said it in a bunch of different ways, but what's like the legacy you want to leave?
Well, the legacy I want to leave is mainly that persistence pays off and never give up. And that if you're not passionate about what you do, then find something that you are passionate about and go do it. Because so many people just accept mediocre. Back to Jim Collins wrote a book back in the 70s, From Good to Great.
Yeah.
And, we say, well, good enough. Well,
Yep.
it's the standard. Go back to the standards that we said. If you strive for excellence, because perfection is a myth.
Yeah.
But if you strive for progress every day, just
Mhm.
progress,
Yeah.
just a little bit of progress in the quality of the maps you put out. I mean, we take great care in adding value. I wish I could show you a map. I will when we get up there. Just a recent boundary survey that.
Yeah.
I put myself in the landowner, this 560 acre tract, and he's got so many corners. All the corners are referenced with the point number and the photo number. And then there's a table of all the corners, not looking down in the hole, but looking off from your fence corner. These guys aren't going to get out of their truck, but they'll go, yeah, that's my corner over there.
Yeah.
There's things that we can do that add value, but a lot of people argue, well, that adds liability. Welcome to the new world. You get up every day, you walk across the street, we're liable for everything, but it's all about, my focus is on how do I add value? My legacy is that I leave behind my company Presently, my employees get my company. Okay, because I have no children. But I have nephews and nieces, and I have a lovely wife. But they don't need the company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The company, I hope, is going to go on.
Sure.
Every job we do, we geo-reference. So we have
It's awesome.
we have Google Earth files.
Yep.
Because there's records that are going to be on for a long time.
Preserved. Yeah, that's good. Well, sir, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation.
When's your
I'm so
talk?
glad.
When's your speech?
It's Thursday morning at 11 o'clock.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
in
All right.
Capri.
I'm sure it's gonna be amazing.
Hey, it's going to be fun.
I love it.
hey,
I'm going to have a
we're all
lot
for
of fun.
fun.
We are all for
And
that.
Hopefully I'll share some information and help people
Yeah.
realize that we're the wizards of our own life. It's like the
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz was also host. We need to be
Yeah.
our own wizards, and we need
Yeah.
to raise high standards for our standards we have as a company, and we have for the quality of work.
Yeah.
I think that'll help us a lot. And how do we improve relations with other people
Yep.
so we can get them attracted to our profession?
Yeah. Well,
Love it.
Peace.
Well said.
thank you for that. Thank you for all of that. And thank you for everything you're doing for the profession. And hope you have a great rest of the show.
Yeah. Thanks,
You
Robert.
guys,
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Robert.
thank you.